You're listening to Boobies and Noobies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. This episode of Boobies and Noobies is brought to you by Wind River Undercover. Discover the true meaning of love and freedom in the American West with the Wind River Valley series, written by New York Times bestselling author, U.S. Navy veteran, and genre pioneer Lindsay McKenna. It's a little bit military with a little bit Western. And let's be honest, what's not to love about that? 2 undercover DEA agents? Check. Attractive men in Stetsons and boots? Check. Badass woman with the grace of a cat and a sniper's deadly aim? Check. And if that wasn't enough to entice you to pick up a copy, you should also know that every installment in the Wind River Valley series thus far has landed on the publisher's weekly bestseller list. In fact, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th installments were also USA Today bestsellers. So I'm just going to stop talking and get back to the podcast. The sooner it's over, the sooner I can get back to my copy of Wind River Undercover by Lindsay McKenna. And now, on to the show. Welcome to Boobies and Noobies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today I'm joined by one of my very best and oldest friends in the entire world. She's an elementary school teacher by day, reality show junkie by night. Please join me in welcoming the lovely Erin Nickell.
Woohoo! I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to have you. And before we talk books, I feel like we owe it to ourselves to talk reality TV. And I need to know, what are you watching during quarantine?
God, I'm watching so many things. I am watching practically everything on Bravo. I am obsessed with Vanderpump Rules and Below Deck, both sailing yacht and regular. Looking forward to Below Deck Mediterranean making its comeback.
Oh, wait, is that separate from regular Below Deck? There's like Below Deck Mediterranean?
Oh, you betcha. You bet ya there's a difference.
Oh my God. That's like having like Real Housewives New Jersey, Real Housewives Los Angeles. There's Below Deck Mediterranean.
Yes, and on this season of Below Deck, while I plug Bravo TV, they
have not sponsored us whatsoever.
I know. If only, God, my dream. They're gonna have a female captain, a female chief stew who's in charge of like all the stewardesses on board, and a female bosun who's in charge of all the deckhands on board. So it'll be a female-run crew. So I'm very excited to see how that plays out.
Wow. I feel like this is both feminist and educational, as I have no idea the like levels of, folks that run boats. So I feel like I could learn so much from watching these shows.
And that's why, my boyfriend is not very supportive of my reality show obsession. So one of his questions once was, why do you watch these shows? And especially in the case of Below Deck, it's because it gives you this peek into this reality that you would I'm not going to be on a yacht.
Right.
How else am I going to know?
No, it's weird to say, but it's like reality shows I look at almost the same way as I look at like documentaries, which I know is like so terrible to say. And every documentary filmmaker is just like, how dare you? But it's true. It's an in-depth look at something, a different world, a different group that like you wouldn't necessarily otherwise know anything, nor maybe even want to know anything about.
Right. And in some cases, I'm very glad that I don't live in their world. And in other cases, it's like, oh, I could handle a weekend on a yacht.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to let everyone know that Erin is single-handedly responsible for introducing me to hashtag Rich Kids of Beverly Hills.
Oh my God, that show is gold.
What a gem. And I'm trying to remember, were you the one that introduced me to Dance Moms too, or was that like a college pick?
It could have been me, but man, how could you avoid it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, either way, you can't go wrong. So and then I have to say the new one that I've been watching is the latest season of The Challenge on MTV.
Oh, yes. Man, they're making them live in a bunker this time. No fancy mansion for them.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I honestly am digging it. Like, I love that they make them like work for it. That just it makes me feel better, because I'm like, when you just put like all these beautiful people in a mansion and give them like unlimited amounts of liquor and, pool time, right. I'm like, that's not fair. But, if you make them live in a underground bunker in the Czech Republic and then compete in death-defying challenges, well, then I feel vindicated. Like, that's absolutely okay.
Well, and this season they're making it so they can't even get to the final unless they go into an elimination round. And I think that is so, like, brilliant. Finally, yeah, they're doing
that. That is fucking brilliant. They should have been doing that this whole time.
Looks like we're gonna get to see Wes in the proving grounds or whatever they call it this season.
Oh, I love my Wes. I love him so much. And I love, by the way, like, if anybody doesn't know any of these shows, you should for sure just like binge. I mean, they're just such trash that it's, we, in a recent episode, we had an interview with Nana Malone. She's a romance author, and she mentioned writing to your id and reading to your id, and basically described that as anything you're trash for. Those were her exact words. Whatever you're trash for, that's what you should be reading and writing. And that's exactly why, if I was to ever write like a romance novel, I think it would be set surrounding reality television. Like, I think there's just, there's no way around it. Like, it's just it's what I'm trash for. I love reality TV and wedding shows. I love wedding shows and like house hunters and renovations. So those are like all the things I'm trash for.
And Kelly, I've never read a Big Brother romance novel. So like, nobody's done that. You better start writing.
I mean, let's not say nobody, because let's face it, there's like a million books out there. So
that's true.
Maybe it's there. Maybe it's there, and I just haven't read it yet. I do remember actually reading one several years back that was kind of modeled like The Bachelor, and it was a romance between the Bachelor, like the actor who was, hired to be the Bachelor or whatever. And I think the woman was like one of the producers or something, which, foreshadowed. Didn't that just happen like on The Bachelor for real?
I think so. Yes, I think so.
So they basically stole it.
All I have to say is that listeners out there, if you yourself have written a reality TV inspired romance novel, please contact me.
Yes.
I want to read your book.
Yeah. So we'll put that out there, and hopefully people will have some recommendations for reality show themed romance novels, because I need them. I need a whole library of them. Like, I don't care if there's one.
This is a niche market.
Yeah, exactly. I know that there are house flipping ones. Like, I have read a few house flipper renovation romances, but that's not enough. I need more. I need all the different shows. Where's Below Deck? Where is Below Deck Mediterranean?
Where is Vanderpump Rules, where they're all just waiters waiting to be actresses?
That's called Los Angeles. I'm living that reality. I don't need that reality show book. Today, Erin and I are taking on a completely different version of this show, because let me tell you about the massive brain fart that I had in this past couple of weeks of quarantine. My ass told Erin that we would be reading The Rakess by Scarlett Peckham. Wonderful book that I have saved on NetGalley to read. The wonderful ladies of Tea and Strumpets just recently read it and did an interview with Scarlett Peckham, and I am dying to read. My ass told myself that we were going to be reading Heiress for Hire, another brand new historical romance by Madeline Hunter. So, because of this massive mix-up, I've decided that we will be doing an odd combination battle of the historical romances for this episode.
I have a title for this segment.
Great, let's hear it.
It's called I'll Show You Mine If You Show Me Yours.
Oh my God, you're brilliant. So, I mean, okay, and I have to say, you know, in my own defense, it is very understandable that I made this mix-up because these are both brand new historical romance releases. I got both of them on NetGalley, early, you know, advanced reader copies. Thank you, NetGalley, for that. I want to say they both came out in April. I think the Rakess might have been maybe a few weeks prior. So either way, they are both available now on Kindle. That's Heiress for Hire by Madeline Hunter and The Rakess by Scarlett Peckham. So you are more than welcome, listeners, to enjoy either of these reading options or both, like Erin and I will be.
Yeah.
So before we get into I'll Show You Mine If You Show Me Yours, the latest segment from Boobies and Noobies, I do just want to give a brief shout out to our amazing April patrons of the podcast, and specifically our latest patron, Heather Toth. Thank you for joining the family. I also want to mention the Boobies and Noobies book club. As you might have noticed on our social media and our brand new website, boobiesandnoobies.com, we have begun a Boobies and Noobies book club that you can join, share your thoughts, and we will then share your comments and ideas on our book club podcast episode. For May, we are reading Artful Lies by Jodi Ellen Malpas. We also will have an interview later this month with Jodi Ellen Malpas. So that's something to look forward to as well. There's still plenty of time to grab the book. I promise you will binge through that story. Although I do have to tell you, there is a cliffhanger ending, which is something that I am not as used to in romance. Yeah, I know. And she's going to continue the story in the second book, which won't come out until November. So prepare yourselves if you do decide to dive into the book, and even knowing that there is a cliffhanger, I think it is absolutely worth reading. I'm just planning on rereading it in November before the second book drops. But yeah, know that going in, because I know that, you know, one of the expectations with romance novels is for a happily ever after, or at least a happily for now ending. And you are not going to get that at the end of this book. It is a to be continued type of story. So this is my warning for everyone. But look forward to the interview with Jodi later this month, followed by our book club episode review. If you want to join the book club discussion, we've got an event happening on Facebook. You can find the access to it on our Boobies and Noobies Facebook page. We've also got it on our website. So there's plenty of ways to get involved. We just want to hear what you think and go from there. So, Erin, before we talk about the books, not the book, the books, I would love to know, before reading The Rakess, and, you know, I'm going to tell you all about Heiress for Hire, so you'll have another book to read.
I'm so excited.
Before reading The Rakess, had you read a romance novel before?
Yes, I love romance novels. They are such a great escape to anything that's going on in your life. They really suck you in.
Like reality television.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. We've cracked the case.
Yeah, there it is. I mean, again, this is our plea to the world to put your hands together for these two things.
Go watch Teen Mom.
Yeah, there you go. There's a romance in the making right there.
Jesus.
Oh gosh, no, you honestly, as long as we've been friends, which is a long time, you have always been a reader. Like, I feel like I don't remember you not having a book that you were talking about or, you know, in your hands. So, I mean, reading for you has always been part of your life.
Oh, yeah. I am the favorite teacher, like, pet. Not really, but I never had to be pushed to read. And so that's why, honestly, my mission as a teacher is to get those kids that don't love reading. All it takes is the right book to sort of spark their fire. So I was just lucky that, for me, that was very early on in life that I got hooked on reading.
Yeah.
God, I sound like a the more you know. Get hooked on reading.
I got hooked on drugs from an early age. I got hooked on historical romance. You can too, kids. It's cool.
Exactly.
Do you remember, I mean, I know that you've been, reading all sorts of stuff for many, many years, but do you remember, like, what maybe one of the first romances you read was?
Ooh, I know that there were romances before this that I had read, but I honestly think, and I hate to, pump it up even more, but 50 Shades of Grey.
There it is.
I've definitely read better ones since then, but that story, just not only the romance parts of it, but the mystery aspect, there was just so much action happening in that book that you had to read the next book and the one after that. And so
exactly,
I really think that that's what began it all.
Yeah, you had to know, like, why he was so, like, mentally and emotionally, like, fucked up with those books. Like, I mean, that's literally what kept me reading those.
Yeah, and then they started introducing the fact that, like, people are following them and stuff, and it was just like, this has nothing to do with sex, but what the hell is happening here?
I forget that halfway through book 2, 50 Shades of Grey becomes a thriller.
Yes, like a Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah, it was something else. I have to say too, they've been playing a marathon of the movies on, I want to say, E! Network, like, all weekend, and it's the first time I've seen the third movie on TV. So I was reminded, because I don't think I've seen it since I saw it in theaters with one of our other best friends and former podcast guest, Natalie. So it's, I mean, reliving it, I was like, oh, that's right. Oh, yeah. Oh, God, now she's got a gun. Oh, yikes. Like, so.
Yes. She's pregnant? Like, all these weird, like, what?
Yeah, but yeah, it's something else. But you're right. I mean, that definitely, as much shit as we give it and a lot of people give the 50 Shades of Grey franchise, like, it really did bring in a lot of romance readers to the genre because it was so mainstream. It was so out there and so public for everyone.
And it finally made it feel like, oh, wow, look at, not that I ever felt any shame, but it definitely kind of opened up a lot of people that would not have reached for that in the first.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying?
I got you. I got the blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you too, because this is now the part of the podcast where I would like to talk about the book. And so typically what we do is I share the Amazon synopsis for the book we read and we go into discussion from there. Now, since I'm a total dodo and we read 2 different books, I would love to have you share a quick synopsis for the Rakess, and I will do the same for Heiress for Hire.
Sure.
Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I would love to start.
Oh, great. Let's hear it. This is The Rakess by Scarlett Peckham.
All right. So we are introduced to Seraphina Arden, which fabulous name.
Baller name.
Yes, who is our Rakess. And I will say one of the hardest parts of this book is it Rakess? Is it Rakess? How do we pronounce that?
Because it's basically like female rake, right? Like the equivalent of like a female rake. Okay.
Yes. So interestingly though, this book starts off with being introduced to first a very big celebration of Mary Wollstonecraft, who is the inspiration of the Rakess, I guess. And it's all about how, a celebration of how women are smart and capable and we deserve everything a man deserves. It's a very feminist book. And we're introduced to the Society of Sirens, who are four like-minded ladies, and one of which is Seraphina Arden. And they work on a publication that gets published under a man's name, but it's all very scandalous. And then their one of their members, her husband, commits her to an insane asylum.
Oh no.
Because he doesn't like the things that she's saying.
Yeah.
Which is terrible. And Seraphina goes back to where she was raised to write the next scandalous volume of her memoirs. While there, she meets a charming architect, but she is trying to, she likes being a Rakess. She doesn't want to be tied down. So she pushes him away for a while, and while they're doing that dance, the town is like scarlet lettering her ass and is like, get this whore out of town. Yes. And then all the while, she and her friends are also trying to find their Eleanor Bell, who in the insane asylum. Where did she go? What's happening? So there was a lot going on in this book, but it really kept you guessing the whole way through.
Okay. So, and then the romance, I'm assuming, occurs between Seraphina and the dashing architect?
Correct. And now the architect has his baggage as well. He is a single father. He's a widower. And his wife died in childbirth, which I don't mean to laugh at that, but part of his baggage of them having, like, he doesn't want to have sex with her.
Oh.
With penetration, because the doctor, before his wife got pregnant, was like, I know, like, you have urges, but you can't have sex with her anymore because she'll die if she has the next baby. So now he's carrying this baggage of, like, when I have sex with women, I get them pregnant and then they're gonna die.
Oh my God. What?
Yes. So it's definitely like, he's like, you're very beautiful, but I can't have sex with you because then you'll die. And it was just like...
So is there just like a lot of like outer course and foreplay happening?
And there is, but I wouldn't say a lot. That's my one criticism of this book, is there really was not a lot of heat on that rating scale.
Okay.
There was not a lot of sex, but I think, as you can tell from my synopsis, there is a lot going on in this book.
Well, and it's so funny from your synopsis, and we will definitely get into our heart, humor, heat ratings in a little bit, but from your synopsis, it seems like the romance is almost secondary to like everything else that's going on plot-wise.
Which I appreciate that, but I also, that's a little bit what I read a romance novel for.
Right. So this might have been something like if you had picked it up like in just fiction or women's fiction, that you wouldn't necessarily assume that there's going to be, raunchy sex, but because it has the label of romance, you kind of feel a little disappointed not getting as much as you thought you were going to get.
Correct. And I also, it's not often that you hear of a book where the woman is supposed to be the one that sleeps around, and is powerful about it. And so honestly, I was very excited to see her like picking up these men, having her way with them, and then going on with her life, like writing her next best-selling novel. But there was not a lot of fuckery, for lack of a better word, before she found the dashing architect.
I was going to say, do we get to see her having some fuckery with some other gentlemen before the architect?
There is one man, he's a French, she describes him as like just this like fancy boy, basically. Who she has invited to like entertain her while she's summering and writing her memoirs. But then she quickly realizes like, yeah, he's a great lay, but he wants to cuddle afterwards. And nobody got time for that. And so she like kicks him out. It's
I love
so
this.
you do have that trope. Yeah, but it's just, I wanted more of that.
Right.
I love the, putting women at the forefront of like moving society, and I loved that, but I also, I wanted the
fuckery.
I wanted the fuckery.
Well, and what's interesting is like, and I've seen this definitely discussed within like the romance community, is that so many, especially historical romance, but you see this in contemporary too. Obviously, with contemporary, you have a better idea of like, women have sex with people. It's not like as frowned upon as in like historical romance. But I feel like in historical romance, like one of the main tropes you always see is the reformed rake. And it's this man that just, he's a player. He's whatever you want to call it for that era. And she, the doting young virgin or widow of some kind, brings him to his knees and changes his ways. And so I love this idea of it being a reverse of that. But I'm like, if you're going to reverse that, I want to see her getting as much play and as much action as like men do when they're painted as like the rake figure.
Exactly. It was like, it's okay for her to be changing society and how they view women and getting some at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and so I'm wondering, hearing this description, I'm wondering how much of this is based on Mary Wollstonecraft, because she is known for writing A Vindication of the Rights of Women, which was like the book that, like, I don't know if it was a book or an essay, but that, was all about how women they're not inferior to men. But like the only reason where they're treated as such is because like they don't have as many options or as much of an education as men should. So, I mean, it was very early feminism. And then, she gave birth to Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein.
Yes. I'd say it's pretty dang inspired by her.
That's cool. And you know what? I'm just looking up Mary Wollstonecraft right now, and it says that she had a few affairs before she married the man that, would give her child, Mary Shelley. So I'm like, okay, this is sounding more and more like Seraphina. I'm here for it.
We need more sex.
Yes.
In the book.
We need it. Seraphina needs it. Everyone needs it. So
Mary needs it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it sounds like Mary got it. So good for her. Oh yeah, I'm assuming that that seems like it's a pretty direct influence there. I like this. Okay, and like I said, I have this book saved to read, and I'm planning on I want to read it first before I listen to Tea and Strumpet's review of it. But let me give you a little insight into Heiress for Hire, because I think this is something. Oh man, you know what? And I'm so bummed that I made this little mix up, because you would have loved parts of this book. Like it's got a little bit of like Murder, She Wrote kind of vibes, but like she's not old. So
yes. A little Midsummer Murders.
Oh, you know it, girl. You know it. So let me tell you the briefest explanation. And mine is kind of the opposite in that it's not very heavily plot driven. Like there's definitely like a central romantic relationship that I feel like is much more prevalent than any other action. So this book is Heiress for Hire by Madeline Hunter, and it is the first book in a new trilogy she's writing. So there are more books to come, just so you know going into it. But I'm pretty sure they're standalone novels, so you don't necessarily have to read one to read the rest. So in Heiress for Hire, our main character, get ready for another baller name, Minerva Hepplewhite.
Oh my.
I'm just going to let that sink in for a moment. Minerva Hepplewhite. So Minerva, we find out over the course of time, she has a pretty tragic backstory, in that when we meet her, she has surprisingly received this huge inheritance of money from a duke that has passed away. And she's being investigated by one of his nephews, our lead man, named Chase Radner, which I think is a cool name too. I'm like, hey, Chase Radner.
Yes.
But so the reason he's like kind of doing this unofficial investigation both into his uncle's death and into Minerva is that Minerva and the Duke didn't know each other. They had like no ties. Chase's family assumed that maybe she was the Duke's, mistress or something, had something to do with her. But,
yes.
But we find out that like they did not know each other at all. So he's kind of like, well, why did she just get all this money? It has a very, what was that movie? It has a lot of Knives Out elements in it. Where
so good.
The whole family is like trying to contest the will and get the money. And it's all been given to Minerva and two other women who we don't meet in this story. And I'm pretty sure that they're going to be the leading women in the future novels, in the rest of the trilogy. And so while Chase is investigating Minerva, they fall in love. Duh. And
Wait, what?
I know. It's almost like it's a romance novel. But she is her like tragic backstory that unfolds over time, both from Chase kind of doing some digging, but also her revealing these things to him as, she grows to trust him, is that she was in a marriage where her husband beat her. And it seems like that might have also gone into the bedroom and he raped her. And the one that really bothered me, that bothered me more than, beating and rape, was that her now dead husband, woohoo, he wouldn't be able to like get it up or like stay hard when they were having sex. So he would blame her and basically like gaslight her for like his impotence, when really,
God.
Well, and apparently he was like really sneaking off and having like kinky sex with like his aunt or cousin or something. So like, yeah, it's gross. So he's dead. Thank God. I mean, I'm like, kudos to him being dead. That's great. Yeah.
Snaps for death.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the secrets that unravels as it goes on is you find out that he actually didn't die by natural causes, as like we were kind of led to believe, but that he was shot. So then you have the second murder that's kind of like in question, and Minerva's the one that clearly is like kind of involved in both of them. But I'll tell you right now, she didn't kill anybody. What's cool though is that she basically starts like a private investigating firm, sort of. Like, I mean,
Ooh.
Yeah, it's called something cute though. It's like Hepplewhite's Firm for Inquiries, or and so she does that, and then Chase is also already doing that. He's doing these like unofficial inquiries and everything that people are sending him on, including the one to find out if his uncle was murdered or if he fell, because like the way he died is he like fell off the roof of their like castle or whatever.
The ladder in his library.
Yeah, no, it's off of the parapet. And so,
ooh, yes.
Yeah, so I'm like, well, duh, he was pushed, like, come on. And so basically as it goes on, Minerva and Chase are each kind of conducting their own investigation. Chase to figure out what happened, for his family, and Minerva to figure out why she was awarded this money. It goes on, and not to like spoil too much for you, Erin, because I know that you need to read it, but
I'm going to read it.
You basically get some of your questions answered. Like, you do find out who killed Minerva's dead husband. You do find out why the Duke gave her money. I will say one of my biggest complaints, even knowing that it's a trilogy, is that you don't find out who killed the Duke in the end. I find very bothersome, but I have.
Well, maybe that's because of the other
Yes.
two ladies that are to come.
That's basically my expectation, because I know that I've read a few series where one of the first ones I can think of is Claire Kingsley has a series called the Bootleg Spring series, and it's all about this family. And each of the books, one of the family members like falls in love with somebody, but the story throughout all of them is this mystery that's unraveling from years before. So, I mean, that's kind of how I'm picturing it. I think it's Claire Kingsley and Lucy Score, now that I remember it. Got to give Lucy her credit.
The Rakess is also a series.
Ooh.
Each of the ladies in the Society of Sirens
Okay.
will get their own book, it looks like.
Okay, good. Good to know. And then in this one, I know that the next book is one of Chase's family members. So what I'm pretty sure it's going to go Chase and then his cousin and then his other cousin, and I think they're going to fall in love with the other women that mysteriously inherited the money. So that's my guess, because it is called let me get this right. It's called A Duke's Heiress romance trilogy. So I'm assuming that it's all about the heiresses that have
a bunch of dukes.
Yeah.
A bunch of dukes falling in love with a bunch of heiresses.
Just what I'm looking for. So, yeah. So, I mean, mine definitely had, but you know what's interesting is like both of our books had kind of like sexual hangups, like because I know in yours you said that the male character had like this bad past and was worried about, you know, impregnating / killing Seraphina, and then in my story, Minerva has all these hangups about having sex with her dead husband that, well, when he was alive. Clearly, we're not no necrophilia up in here.
Right. But, no, not on Boobies and Noobies.
No. But it was, you know, so whenever they have sex up until the very end, she's always on top, because that's like the way that she feels comfortable. And she didn't even realize that was like an option, like when she and Chase have sex for the first time. And he's like very encouraging. And so she's always on top up until the very end.
Reclaim your power, girl.
Yeah, true that. Okay, so tell me what you loved about your book, and maybe a few things that not so much, you know, like just think of me as one of the newbies, you know, if I haven't read this book yet either. So you tell us what we can prepare ourselves for.
So I truly loved Seraphina Arden is a fully realized character.
Awesome.
You might not get a lot of her sexcapades, but you feel her power, you feel her drive. You know what she loves and what she won't stand for. You do get a sneak peek into why she has become this Rakess, like what in her past sort of like pushed her to be this way and to claim her sexuality. And then by the end it ends well for her, is what I will say. I don't want to give anything away. And the architect that she falls in love with, he is also, I mean, he's a great man. He's willing to accept fault, and like he would be, besides the fact that he's got a weird sex thing for a while, he'd be an ideal partner for somebody even nowadays. He's a great guy.
Good.
Yeah. So I loved all the twists and turns of the story. The only downside is I was looking for, what did you call them? Sexperts?
Sexerps.
Like the experts of sex. Yeah. That I could highlight and just like really celebrate. And there was more than one, but there was only one that I was like, oh yeah, like that's.
Okay, so they do finally get to bone down.
They do. And, I will say he doesn't want to, penetrate her, but he is down to go down on her, which is great.
Yes, that's in my book too. And I especially love when I read a romance and there's definitely like the man going down on the woman and like she doesn't blow him. I'm like, victory.
Exactly. Yes.
So
None
good.
of that quid pro quo stuff.
Yeah, fuck that. But anyway, no, that sounds great. And I mean, it honestly, it sounds like fantastic characters. Like, and what a great like backdrop for a story too. Like this whole setup, and a lot of that sounds so tragically real for the era. Like the whole idea of like committing women, you know, because they had their own thoughts. Oh God, that's definitely on my list.
So this book, I had kind of low ratings for humor and heat, but like high in heart. Like you care about these characters.
Okay, that's interesting because I have the same thing. My heat rating is definitely going to be higher than yours. But I will say that as far as the heat goes in Heiress for Hire, it's definitely a lot less graphic than I typically read in a romance novel. Like it's a lot more of sort of the idea of things get started and then we kind of cut to the orgasm. I'm like, oh, okay.
We wake up tangled in the sheets.
That's definitely a direct phrase used in this book. So, but I will say the heart rating I put very high because not only do I love the romance between Chase and Minerva, because it's kind of like more of like a what's the best way to describe it? It's not cat and mouse game, but more of like a I can do this better, I can do this. You know, it's just very like playful and like they challenge each other and they compete with each other of what information did you get? And I like that. I found that really fun, and it's not a funny book, but that definitely adds to the humor, is them like kind of competing to solve this case, which never gets solved by the end of the story. I will say the rest of the heart too, there's a lot of heart in the people that surround them, specifically the people that are in Minerva's life. She has this servant who it's hard to even call her a servant, named Beth, and Beth's son Jeremy, and Jeremy is 21, so he's older. But Beth and Jeremy have been a part of Minerva's life since when she got married to, you know, the terrible dead husband. And Beth has basically taken on like a maternal role in Minerva's life, and Jeremy is like a brother, and they will do anything for her and she will do anything for them, and they live there in the house with her. She doesn't pay them. They don't want to be paid. Like they are part of her family. So there's so much heart.
Wow.
So much heart between them. And then on Chase's side, he has, you know, this crazy fucking family that's all out for money. But amongst his family, and this is who I think the following books are going to be about, he has Kevin, who's another cousin. I first of all thought it was really funny that there's somebody in this era named Kevin. Maybe that just seemed weird to me. And then the one who has...
And then there's Kevin.
Yeah, and then there's Kevin. And then his other cousin is the one who has actually inherited the dukedom. So he's now the reigning duke, and his name is Nicholas. And so I'm pretty sure the books are going to be about them because they're really the only three redeemable men in that terrible family. Everybody else is like, I need the money to do this. Or there's like the young cousin that's like, I've already spent all my money, give me more. So it's just it's a terrible typical family that you would expect, who is very used to like being accommodated a certain way, and now they don't have the money to do it. It is so Knives Out. I mean, just as I'm telling you this, I'm like, this is Knives Out to a T. I mean, there's a lot to love. I will say, you know, as somebody who loves mysteries and crime solving capers, the one thing that I feel like really bothers me is I don't think there's a lot of detecting going on for like two detectives. So
yes.
it was interesting because they each have their own method. Like Minerva tries to be like, you know, she takes advantage of the fact that she's a woman. Like Chase basically says, who's going to give you information? Like who's going to hire you because you're a woman? Like people just won't, you know, it's not that I agree with it, but it's like there are places that you cannot go as a woman in our society.
Right.
And so her response is, well, you know what? If I'm a woman, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I'm a woman and I'm going to go places that you can't go. So she, you know, yeah. And so she basically takes on the approach to be like the doting, nice woman that just wants to get to know people and form bonds with them and then get information out of them. Whereas Chase is like so direct in his investigations. He'll like go up to somebody and be like, hey, did you see somebody here on the night the Duke was killed? Did they kill the Duke? Did you kill the Duke? Like, it's just, it's so funny. But his backstory is that he was in the army, and he has kind of like a story about how he was basically asked to resign his commission in the army, which you find out about later in the story. But that was basically his thing, is he was like an investigator in the army and he would interrogate people. So he has a much more direct approach. But so for the first like 50% of the book, I'm just like, wait a second. What has anybody learned at this point? Like, is anybody working? Is anybody doing their investigations? Because I hear you talking a lot about your investigations and like how you're going to do them, but I need to see it because I don't believe you. So,
but have you done it?
Right. That was like my major thing, is by the end of the book, they had, you know, basically talked to a few of the main players in the game, you know, that they're looking at who could have potentially killed the Duke. But I felt like this was not an adequate investigation. And I guess that makes sense considering there's 2 more books. But I feel like if those books are going to cover other people in this universe and focus less on Chase and Minerva, they're the ones investigating. How am I going to find things out? So that would be
work out, Kelly.
Yeah, that's my one thing, is that if you're looking, I wouldn't call it like a romance mystery or like a mystery romance or a suspense romance. Like there is an element of investigation happening, but it's so small that it's a lot more about these 2 characters falling in love despite these circumstances that they're in. So yeah, that's Heiress for Hire.
Very interesting.
So I'd love to have you share a excerpt from the Rakess. It almost sounds like the Rockettes, but I know that that's not it.
Okay, here it is. Okay, so this is the architect speaking,
yes,
or thinking, I guess. Was it possible he'd never really kissed her? He hadn't. Not like this. Not the way you kissed a woman when you wanted to say, with the brush of your lips, with the lingering of your tongue, with the whisper of your whiskers on her jaw, how much she meant to you. To print it on her, to make her understand it in her teeth, her blood, her bones.
Ooh.
That's it. Yes.
Okay. I'm into it.
That can even show you too, right there, how it's all like all the really good sex stuff in here is like tied to their emotions, and it just feels like to their core they love like they need each other.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Eventually.
I like that. I like that. Well, and so assuming, and they get a happy ending, I'm assuming.
Pretty close. Pretty close to one. It's not perfect.
That's okay.
It does tie up nicely.
I honestly, sometimes I prefer like a less perfect, you know, tied with a bow ending than like the perfect ending. It just, It doesn't feel as real. And especially in a story like that, where it seems like it's so much of it is based in reality, like that, I think that's important. Mm-hmm. Okay. I've got one for you. So I, you know, mentioned that he eats her out in this book. Great. He actually does it on more than one occasion. The first time he does it, it's clearly the first time anybody's gone down on her. And she's like, whoa. And then the second time, I was actually pleasantly surprised by it because of the position in which he eats her out. And she basically is like straddling his face in this one. So that was not something I was expecting from like a historical romance read. But
Right.
I was pleasantly surprised. So let me give you a little excerpt of, Chase and Minerva. Chase says, "Move up here so I can use my mouth on you." It took her a moment to sort out what he meant. She moved forward on her hands and knees. He slid down enough to take her breast in his mouth. His kisses alone had her halfway to insanity, but the way he licked and sucked her breast made her tremble with need. The first tensions of her release started tightening, and he had not even really touched her. She started moving back so she could take him into herself. That's like a big phrase in this book, by the way, is like taking him into her or him entering her. That was like every sex scene. He says, "Don't lose your courage now. Move forward. Keep coming up here." She did come close to losing her courage. She wasn't sure she wanted to wait, for one thing. She sensed this was something he wanted, however. The pleasure would not really be hers alone. She inched up, moving her knees forward. Eventually, she had no choice but to kneel upright. She grabbed onto the headboard and looked down at how his head was positioned right below her body. He gently pushed her knees apart, then lifted his head. Yeah.
Nice. That is very detailed.
I know. There were a few like headboard gripping scenes. I was like, ooh, okay then. Let's grip that headboard.
I love that even in the oral sex, she's on top.
Yeah. That the other time they
Right
have oral sex is I think she was sitting in a chair and he was like on the floor. So there's definitely like this, he relinquishes power to her like in the bedroom like so much. So I mean it's never like described that way. It's never like a who's more dominant or anything like that. It's a lot of trust. And that's basically their relationship is just kind of building this foundation of trust. So yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I'm so displeased with myself for making a mix up as big as telling you one book and then reading another, which is a podcast first. So you should be honored to have that cast upon you. But on the other hand, I feel like there's so many similarities and so many wonderful things about each of these books that hopefully, our listeners will be able to take away from this 2 new reads to check out. I know I've got one to, read next, and hopefully you do too.
Yes, I definitely got to read Heiress for Hire. Yeah. It's on my list.
Just be prepared for like poor investigating.
Jessica Fletcher would not be impressed.
Yeah, no. Well, you know what? She's a poor investigator too. So, I mean, that's...
She is.
Oh, gosh. I know.
It's Cabot
Cove. Look out. If Jessica's there, someone's dead.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I think my aunt used to call it Murder She Caused.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like anytime I would watch it with my uncle growing up, he would be like, "Oh yeah, this is the one where Jessica did it." Just about any episode. Like, "Oh, do you see what they all have in common? It's Jessica. She did it." If anybody is too young listening that has not watched Murder, She Wrote, you are doing yourself a disservice. Oh. It is the perfect rainy afternoon show to throw on or to fall asleep to at night.
Yes, it's on Amazon Prime. So,
in fact, now that we've mentioned it, I'm sensing a Murder, She Wrote marathon as I like pack up my room to move.
Yes.
Winning
it's
right
necessary.
There. I'll mix it in below deck. It'll go below deck.
Yes.
Murder, She Wrote, Vanderpump Rules.
I love it.
Just sandwiched on
All of the above. All of the above.
So, Erin, let me ask you, I'm going to have you give your book, The Rakess. I'm going with Rakess, not Rakess. Like, it sounds better as the
Okay.
Rakess.
I'm
going to ask you to give it a few grades, and we're going to grade for heart, humor, and heat on a scale of 10, 10 being the very highest, very best that it could possibly be. Let's start with heart, since I think we're both going to have fairly high heart ratings.
I would give the heart as high as I'm going to give it an 8.
Okay.
Yes, I felt like there was a lot of heart between her and her lover and between her and her friends. I would have liked to see just I feel like a big part of heart is sex. So I'm taking off a little bit of that rating.
How about the humor rating?
Humor rating this is a serious, like, want to change the world from the past type of book. So I think humor is, maybe a 2.
Okay. It's not part of the story. I mean, it's not a rom-com. It's not any sort of comedy.
No, there's no, dropping everything in the middle of the street and looking up sheepishly, like
is that the comedy?
Get something. Yeah, like bending down to get something and bonking heads with
Got it.
your lover
and spilling coffee on them, and here we are.
Right. And then they look to the camera and laugh. No, none of that.
Got it. Okay, fair enough. And then how about the heat? I know that you said there's not a lot of bonking going on in this, but
no.
Did you at least feel that there was like the slow burn element? Like, did it feel like it was building up to some big release?
Definitely. So it's not like a slow burn from the beginning to the end, but there was definitely a lot of tension, because initially, when she first saw this architect, she was like, yes, I want him in my bed.
Yes.
This guy is for me. And he was very much like, oh, miss, excuse me, no, like very clutching of the pearls. So there was definitely a lot of build up to the first time that they have sex. So I'm going to give this book maybe higher than expected after how much I've said. I wanted there to be more set. But I'm going to give it a 5, because when there was sex, it was good. And, I think it says something, too, that my sexcerpt wasn't even about sex. It was about kissing. But
you know what?
That's how well she could write.
Yeah, you're not the first person to choose a kissing sexcerpt as their sexcerpt for the story. I mean, sometimes those kissing scenes are like just as raunchy, like the way they play them out. Yeah. So, okay. I'm kind of like all over the board too with my ratings for Heiress for Hire, because I had the heart rated as a 9. Like, I had it a very, very high heart quality. It just, there's, like I said, there's so much between not only Minerva and Chase, but also the people that surround Minerva's life, and like everyone that meets her. Like, they would just do so much. And you know what? It's such a small thing, but there's like this, Chase has a manservant named, I think it's Brigsby, and Bigsby, it's something like that. Something you would like name a dog. And
these names.
But he's like so devoted to Chase. Like, in one scene, Minerva gets hurt, and so Chase comes to her house to like, make sure she's okay and take care of her. And Brigsby, whatever the fuck his name is, like runs in with like Chase's suitcase, and they're like, yeah, just leave it here. And he's like, no, I am a manservant. I must tend to my master's needs. I am here for him. I'm like, wow. Okay, Brigsby is in it to
I would
win
like
it.
a fanfic.
Yes.
I would like a fanfic of Brigsby and Chase.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I totally am. So that can happen. Humor, it's not a rom-com. It's not... I mean, it's not like a funny book, but it's also not like there's definitely serious elements, especially in like their backstories. But I do think like there's a little bit of fun between the investigations and kind of like competing with each other. And then Chase and his family are pretty fun. Like the conversations he has, especially with Nicholas, who is the new Duke, since their uncle died. He's the one whose book I like really want to read. I want to read Nicholas's story. So they kind of added some fun to it. I mean, at one point they use the line, what were they? I'm trying to remember what the context was. I think it was about how supposedly their uncle had hooked up with somebody, and they tell Nicholas like, oh, well, you should hook up with her too. And he's like, well, that's weird. Why would I want to hook up with somebody that like my dead, uncle hooked up with? A memorial fuck? And I'm just like, and I was like, well, that's cute. So I mean, they have some good banter between like Chase, Nicholas, and Kevin. And so
Kevin.
It's like a little funny, but I mean, I'm going to give it a 5 just because I don't want people to go into it like expecting like uproarious laughter. So, and then as far as heat goes, there actually are several sexy scenes. Like there's probably like at least 4 or 5 scenes of some sort of hot encounter. They're not necessarily all as detailed as I would like necessarily expect. So I'm gonna give it a 7. I'm gonna give it a 7. Like I think there was a good amount, and I think they kind of came in great places. They came in great places throughout the story. But, I could have definitely have used, I don't think it's as high up on like the heat level. It's a lot more tender lovemaking. So nothing wrong with that. If you're into a good lovemaking story, this might be the one. But yeah.
Sounds fantastic.
I mean, this is so funny because we've never had an episode like this, but I have to ask, are you happy with the book that you read?
Yes, I am happy I read it, definitely. And I would recommend it. And what's kind of great about it, this could be a entry-level romance novel for someone who's not sure they can, who's not sure they can handle a 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
I think it's great. It's like entry-level, someone who loves mystery and history and upending the patriarchy.
And you love all those things. Yeah, we both love all of those things.
Yes.
That's good.
Still happy with it.
I would have to say the same for Heiress for Hire. Like I found it very enjoyable. I would definitely recommend. I know that I definitely am hooked on reading the Rakess, and I also want to read the books that follow in both series. I mean, do you think you've heard enough about Heiress for Hire to want to check that one out too?
Let me tell you, it's already in my Amazon cart.
Okay, good to know. I'm glad. Yeah, well, and you know what? This is so funny. I mean, I know that this was like a happy accident, but seeing as they're both going to be part of a series, separately, independent series, I feel like maybe we might just have to like revive this I'll show you mine if you show me yours segment for future books in our respective series.
Recurring segment. Love it.
So listeners, let me know if you enjoyed this. I know that this is definitely not what anybody was probably expecting, least of all me or Erin. So but I have to say, nonetheless, I thought it was very fun, and I think it's so interesting that these two books came out around the same time, and it seems like there are so many similar elements between the two. I mean, they're definitely by no means the same book, but I think that this could definitely hit a similar audience. Like both books could hit the same audience.
Definitely.
Well, okay. We both have our reading then to do. We clearly have things to add to our Amazon accounts. But thank you so much, of course, for 1, joining me to do the podcast, and 2, for bearing with me and my silly mix up and making it work Tim Gunn style.
Yes. Oh, it was so fun. Also another great reality show.
Oh, Yeah. I mean, we gotta bookend the episode with, the best of reality TV, right? So, oh God, such a great one. Love me some Project Runway.
Definitely. Make it work.
Always make it work. Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Noobies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow Boobies and Noobies on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Boobies Podcast.